My decision to go into MBA, I think, was just a chance. I don't think I ever thought about it. I also didn't know that there are actually MBA colleges are listed. These are good colleges, these are ranked colleges. I had absolutely no idea. Other thing which we have always been conscious about is which story are you telling and how much money should that be spent on telling that story. So it has always been, especially this is something I've also picked up from Anurag, because he started producing way early, like very early, and is that every story needs to have only a certain budget. People sell that space, but the best space to advertise a film to a male audience is the urinal. Technically, a producer is somebody who's supposed to raise money, make the film, exploit the film, get all the revenue, return the money to whoever the interest is, and then also ensure that the film is exploited and it has reached out to the audience. More than 60 to 70% of business comes only from 12 to 14 cities. That's it. The rest of the country contributes just about 20%. You make 150 rates in Bombay and then let's discuss box office. I'm just saying that. Just think about it.
In this episode of Konversations Cafe Podcast, we have an unusual guest. We have Ranjan Singh, who is the producer of this upcoming film called Kennedy, which has traveled to Cannes recently. He talks about how film production in general works in India. He talks about how independent filmmakers and producers survive and suffer in this particular economy. If you are a marketing enthusiast or a film enthusiast, you are definitely going to like this, because he has shared his nuggets about working with Kashyap for the longest time. So if this is something that you like, do listen to the podcast to the very end, and like this video and subscribe this particular channel if you want to see more of this content. The podcast with Ranjan Singh starts in 3, 2, 1. So, Ranjan, thank you very much for joining us today. Flight back from Cannes, I think, has happened very recently for you. You guys were traveling for your recent film, Kennedy, there. Kaisa tha? How was the experience there as a producer this time when you went there?
These film festivals, especially the big ones where they go on, have their own kind of an ecosystem. Yeah. So getting your film there is one part, and then ensuring that it gets a great showcase there and you create some kind of a noise and which can help in the film's longer journey, depending upon whatever the objective of your film is. There are a lot of things which you have to do. So it helps that you have a great studio backing you up, and with a lot of experience of last so many years, this time we were able to do certain things more better. It's always great to be at Cannes, show your film. There are
walk in the red carpet.
Yeah. We also had a very big contingent this time. We had about 45 odd people from the film crew that were there. So that was very special.
Lovely, great. And let's just step back a little to your journey from where it all started.
Like I said, my parents were from Bihar. My dad was in the army, so a lot of moving around while growing up. I was born in Secunderabad. I've stayed in Allahabad, then Himachal. Gujarat was probably the longest time I've stayed in apart from Bombay. I come from a very humble background. So watching movies itself first were in the army theatre, which would be about once a week. And then after my dad retired, and I'm the third child, so by the time I was growing up, my dad was retired. Then it really became what you finding, and nobody in my house was into films as such. But yeah, I remember watching a lot of films, especially in the morning shows. Baroda is a place where there were pretty good amount of theatres, and I would cycle especially on the weekend in the morning shows, because that was the cheapest show.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that I remember clearly, and in retrospection now I realize that was probably my love for movies, was getting these Filmfare magazines. And at that time, they would only be available on the AH Wheeler stores on railway platforms. So would cycle all the way to the station every week and go there and buy it. And I still have some of them. So as early as 1987. So most of my stuff, reading about films or whatever came from there. And in a very strange way, a lot of my knowledge, early knowledge about Bombay also came from those magazines. Because they would explain where was this premiere, where was this theater and stuff like that. So these were the two things I feel probably was an origin. And my serious stuff about working into movies came, I think, when I was doing my MBA. And when I started understanding that, probably you could also have a career in movies. From where I came, there was absolutely no idea that how do you make a career in movies. And so when I was doing my MBA, and then after that I got into advertising. And it was here only in Bombay that, we were pitching for Inox, which had just been announced, and their first cinema was coming up in Pune.
Right.
And we were trying to get a pitch for them. Again, lack of information. I probably thought, joining a exhibitor chain means you're working in movies.
Right.
And then once you join, and then you realize, no, this is actually exhibition. So in a sort of a way, I've come the opposite way, from the theaters to back to making films.
Lovely.
So that's like the origin problem.
Great. I really like that answer. Let's talk about your B school. Probably a lot of your contemporaries also don't know that you have a B school degree, and after you share this with them, they would get to know that you do have one. What was the time when you thought that a B school degree is kind of a thing that you want to do in your life? Were you serious about it? Were you looking into the B school that you're getting into seriously as well? Or were you sure that this is the next step that you're going to take after the B school?
I was absolutely not sure. I to be honest, like I said, that I really came from a humble background. And more than humble, the problem was that nobody in my immediate family or where we were growing up, would discuss even a postgraduate education. Most people were trying to, get through their graduation, go for a job and survive. My decision to go into MBA, I think, was just a chance. I don't think I ever thought about it. I also didn't know that there are actually MBA colleges are listed, these are good colleges, these are ranked colleges. I had absolutely no idea. In fact, my favorite memory of how I came to know what IIM is my that time classmates can tell you now that I was in a bus and the bus passed by IIM Ahmedabad. And our college was after that. And I reached there and I meet some people and I'm like, what is that building of red bricks? And then somebody said, idiot, that's the best MBA college you have in this country. I'm like, really? I said, how come I didn't know about it? So to answer your question, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I had a very, very, very flimsy reason to do it that time, which I really don't know even counts now.
Which is?
That time I was dating this girl, and later...
It counts.
And she was my wife, who's now my ex-wife now. She came from a very well-to-do family. And the only reason probably she said, they'll even consider it is probably if you have a good education. So that was my entry into it, but I give it a lot of credit. There were two very clear things which happened in my thing. One was I had come for this group discussion at Pune University. I think what they used to call it is Pumba that time, PUMBA. That is when I first realized that there were a lot of kids, a lot of people my age, a lot of students who were talking about getting into entertainment and a lot of those things. And that is for the first time it struck me that, oh, actually you can do it. You can actually, people with no background can do it. And the second thing was when I did my MBA in Ahmedabad through this college called Som Lalit, is when I met a lot of these faculties. The great thing about that college, it was a new college. I think it was the second year or first year of our batch. The good thing though was we had a lot of shared faculties with IMA. Like Kakoli Saha, and there were some renowned lecturers who would come to take guest lectures with us. That is when I realized that actually, media can be studied. You can, have a career in them, in media and probably films and stuff like that. I feel that, the B school that I did probably didn't help me for a management job and all, but what it did for me is opened my mind and gave me a lot of exposure. So I really feel that has been a great contribution in my life.
Right. And what was the early career that you had after your B school days were over? Now, I'm sure that if you were not sure about your B school choice, you were not very sure about where to go next from the B school also. So how did you tackle that?
Yeah. So like I said, it was roughly, I think the fourth semester is when I got introduced to this subject called advertising. Somewhere I connected, okay, this is something which comes naturally to me, like when I read about Ogilvy and the other advertising grades and the copy and everything, and that how it is a properly organized industry, is when I started thinking that. So one thing became very clear, like in life, the one thing that I always joke about, that I'm very clear about what I don't want to do. So kya nahi karna hai, that I'm very clear. So I knew what my other colleagues and friends were doing. They were all applying for, the financial institution jobs and a lot of FMCG jobs. So I was very clear, this is just not working for me. Till about the last semester, I didn't know. Probably, the whole plan would have been, which I think vaguely now would go back to Baroda, get into a business with one of the friends or whatever, do something like that. But advertising got me interested. There was a friend of mine who later on became a great journalist, Stavan Desai. He had studied mass communication. He introduced me to there was this very cool agency in Baroda, it still is, it's called Cognito. And the founder was an ex-O&M. So he said, that's a great place to start. And we both applied. As luck would have it, I got through. And Stavan didn't. And then Stavan later chose to become a journalist and stuff like that. So that was my entry into advertising. And that, I can really say, changed my life.
Right.
I was in Bombay in about 9 months. I was a young guy when I joined. I was 24. And then my boss, and because he also had been trying to open a branch in Bombay.
Yeah.
So we sat together and he said, let's. So in 9 months, at about when I was 25, we opened a branch in Bombay, which I was completely running. Once I came here is exactly when all the exposure happened. You started, one, of course, I was reading, so reading a lot about business magazine, like in B schools, they encourage you to read a lot of business magazines, and so, but my Filmfare was constant.
Yeah.
So a lot of those things. And then in about 18 months is when I started realizing that I think I want to get into movies.
Right.
And Inox came along.
Right.
Just roughly at the same time. So, and then I applied and then I got through.
So you spent a considerable amount of time at Inox, Ranjan. You became an area marketing head after spending 4 or 5 years,
4 years.
In that particular company. What was the kind of work that you were doing that made you think that, probably this is what films mean. Probably this is where I will get my next break from.
Yeah. See, it was very interesting. To be honest, it was a new sector, for India. Multiplexes, I mean, there was PVR, of course, but PVR was primarily in Delhi. They had 3 properties, I think. By 2002, they had 4. They had Saket, Narayana, one more. So Inox was very new. Like the multiplex industry was very new, and I joined them just when Pune had begun, and I was sent there for a month to learn, observe, and everything. So it was a great, exciting time. For the entire people used to drive from Bombay to Pune to watch movies at the Bun Garden property, which is the first property that, and almost every area, I remember in the first 3-4 years, where a multiplex would open. I can talk about Inox that time because I was working. The entire area would change, So like Bun Garden, just next to Wadia College. Today, if you go there, there's a Taj, there's a mall, there's everything. And everything started with the property. So one, it was great novelty. For the first time, you experienced that, amazing seating and that you could watch your films. That was one, like the comfort of watching a film. The other thing which happened, I'll say with multiplexes, was because there were multiple screens, they would screen a lot of films, which means you were exposed to a lot of non-Hindi films from abroad. I remember even regional language films, Point being, suddenly your exposure to cinema went multifold. One, you were having a lot of comfort in watching them, and 2, you were getting a lot of variety of films because it became a demand-supply thing. The more screens you have, the more films you want, And suddenly at the same time, the Hollywood studios, because now suddenly they could see that, multiplexes are coming, growing, their revenues are going up. So and obviously because the studios are older and they've done that at a lot of countries, they became very big supporters, So how do you support your film? You come up with great publicity, you do events around them, you give out merchandise, freebies, and that's when it all starts. The culture starts building. A lot of more people want to come. Like the first Inox, in Pune, and it had a McDonald's. I can't tell you the craze that we have seen, and I have pictures. In fact, I should have carried them today. You know, there used to be queues for about 2 kilometers, and somebody has taken a picture from the top of the building, and you could see that, you know, the entire line going there, and that whole joy of an ice cream with a movie, and suddenly these things became mainstream, and city after city. So I have kind of between Inox and PVR ended up working on at least multiplex in different capacities where you would work on a campaign at least for about 20-22 cities.
Wow.
So including cities like Latur and Aurangabad, where I've been involved in opening a multiplex, Panjim, in a small way, Darjeeling, Jaipur, Bangalore, you know, so you just learn how every city reacts to it, how a metro reacts to it, how a different neighborhood in a metro reacts to it, how a small town reacts to it, you know. So all this was happening. Point being, there were a lot of different things happening across.
Yeah.
In terms of viewing cinema, in terms of watching great cinema, in terms of people's behavior changing and stuff like that. So it was a great, exciting time for multiplexes.
So would you suggest that somebody who is having a degree like this from a good institute should get into a business like yours that you went into, and do you think that money can be made?
So I'll say, but see, I have, like I said, we discussed, there are 3 different broad sectors. Like I worked into exhibition, then I worked into distribution and a studio setup. And now I'm with the independent production house. So if, depending on which of these are you referring, I can probably, but yes, if you do that kind of a degree, you definitely, if you work at a studio or a big OTT platform, there are big content companies now. You definitely can, you know, make sense out of your salary and everything. Independent production houses, probably a different thing. Depending upon what kind of independent production house. Also, are they going to take you for your degree or probably for some other quality that you have? So I really don't know. Then does it become fair to compare the cost of the degree versus what you're doing here? You know, but the other 2, I feel, definitely you should.
Were you happy with the kind of work that you were doing, the kind of compensations that you were getting at that point in time? And what was the time when you shifted to Phantom in your career?
Yeah, the first part of it was, yes, I was very happy. I was very happy with the compensation and the work. I was very happy with the first 5 years of, you know, going to new cities, understanding behaviors. I did, probably I was the only guy, I've actually used a lot of structured. My sole reason to shift to PVR that time probably was, you know, I felt that PVR is a more cinema loving company. So once I shifted to PVR and we opened some Juhu, Mulund, then Latur, Aurangabad, one in Baroda, and Goregaon. So all these properties were coming. Phoenix was just being refurbished and all. And then PVR decided to get into production. Is when I shifted into the production side, which is PVR Pictures. And we used to do a lot of good distribution, you know, films like Paris Jetem, Lafon, Burn After Reading, these very small good films, you know, which today it's so good to see kids talk about, you know, and with OTT they're all accessible. That time it used to be really difficult. Either you would get pirated DVDs or some of these films which you would manage to buy and bring it. In fact, PVR Pictures, we got the entire, Kill Bill was brought by PVR Pictures. A lot of focus feature films, Miramax films were brought that time. So, like I said, great exciting time. But yeah, but by that time, I also personally realized that, you know, this is not making movies, you know. Is when the first opportunity came, which was production, I shifted there, me and my ex-boss, Mr. Ashish Saxena. So 2 people from the cinema side shifted there. And the first 2 films PVR was making was with Amir Khan, which is Tare Zameen Par and Jaane Tu Ya Jaane Na.
Right.
So that time we were involved as from the studio side. That's the journey till there. And then PVR made some more films. After Ashish, we had Uday Singh who was leading it. And I think by another 2 years after 2 years after getting to film production from a studio side is again, probably I felt, you know, that more exciting stuff is happening at the production houses. You know, so that curiosity and that was the angle that, you know, I wanted to move from a studio to actually making films.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. Phantom, which happened 2 years after. Actually, I quit PVR, and I don't know if you know this. Then I went and worked for the government for NFDC. By the time I had known Anurag before, and I remember he was the one who told me that, you know, NFDC is really looking to change things and do some new things coming up. So, and they're looking for some younger people from the private sector and stuff. So I worked with them for 6 months. After that, I did some independent producing, and then Phantom happened.
Right.
That's how I reached Phantom, and I think I was probably the first guy to take up a job, or Anurag had called me that now we are forming this company, why don't you come and join? And that's how I went there.
What was that call like? When you first, by this time you probably must have known Anurag in the way he worked.
Yeah. 4-5 years I had known him. So, like I said, when I met him, he was also struggling to put his film out. He, of course, was a very big name by that time. He had written Satya, he had written a lot of, he had written Shul, he had written Kon, and people knew him in the industry, but his film was stuck. It's a very filmy incident to narrate. So, like I said, PVR Juhu had opened, and we would experiment with a lot of foreign cinema and all. And especially, and I learned it from my ex was Ashish Saxena. He was really he had a keen eye of getting this small but very good films, and Mr. Sanjeev Bijli, he would travel to most of the festivals and he would pick films. So there was this French film which had won Cannes that year, and I had seen it at IFFI the year before, and this would be about May, I think 2006. The film was L'Enfant, the infant. So I had somehow managed to get a certain budget first time for a French film. Okay, let's put out one ad in, and those time Bombay Times, I think the film entertainment page, the color ad for a 24cc would be about, I think 25-28 grand or something, if I remember it correctly. So it was a huge amount for a small film, where you're not sure how many people come and watch a French film. So I put out this ad, I've convinced my bosses, they've allowed me. So, and I was so curious that I thought I want to go and stand at the box office today and see who are the people who want to come and watch a French film. So I am reaching there, and I reached the box office. The Juhu box office is an outside area where anybody can go there. Like, it's not inside a thing, the box office is open. And I go there and I see there's somebody already there, like in this whole oversized t-shirt with a backpack, and he turned and I'm like, and I don't know what happened. I said, "Are you are that blogger, right, Anurag Kashyap?" And he's also very amazing. Like, yeah, because passion for cinema was, our go-to website that time. For younger people who are trying to understand what is this, why are our films not like them, and passion for cinema used to make a lot of sense for us. And my first request was, "Are you are that blogger?" And he said, yes. So I'm saying, "What? Why are you here?" And he's like, "I want to watch L'Enfant. I've come for the ticket." And I'm like, wow. So that's my introduction to Anurag, like on a box office. And I was very impressed. Like, here's one guy, and he's come to buy a ticket. He saw the ad in the morning. In my head also, as a young marketing guy, I'm also like very impressed. I think, wow, today is going to be houseful. No, 22 people came only. And I don't think I ever got a budget to put out an ad for a French film.
And interestingly, you actually worked in a lot of these projects which became cults or favorites later on. It involves Lutera, it involves
a lot of
Udta,
Masaan,
Punjab,
Hunter,
Masaan.
NH10.
Correct. So all these films, if you're talking about all of these films, probably if you ask people, they would say that they're made for the niches, right? And then eventually when they got discovered, people saw the kind of films that they were, saw the value that they, kind of brought to the table. And then it became what it became later on, right? During these times, what was your favorite story that comes to your mind, favorite film story that among these films that we talked about, that you really thought that, yaar, isko to 1000 लोगों से ज़्यादा दिखाना बहुत मुश्किल है, but then it transpired into something completely different. And you were also questioning your own judgment about the marketing of the film that you were doing.
See, niche is a term I feel is very time sensitive, So, like today, everybody in the industry is telling us, why don't you make a Wasipur 3?
Yeah.
Or rather telling Anurag that, And imagine that time, it struggled to even find a theatrical release, So, what was niche then probably is now mainstream. As people who are working in those films, I don't think we ever discussed that niche. We have always felt that if it reaches the right audience, like I said, it'll find its audience base or whatever it is. Now, the other thing which we have always been conscious about is which story are you telling and how much money should that be spent on telling that story. So it has always been, especially this is something I've also picked up from Anurag, because he started producing way early, like very early, and is that every story needs to have only a certain budget, which is recoverable, because you are responsible for the money that is being given to you to make a film. So we've never thought about like it is, I said, yeah, but we've always thought about if it is trapped, then it has to be made in a certain budget. And we had some wonderful people like, executive producers, Deepa Motwane, who would ensure like two of the best films that she has produced, like Masaan and Trapped, and to make them in that budget is absolutely crazy. And that's the reason, nobody's unhappy with those films, because people who put in money into those films have recovered. This is the part about the niche and the other thing. About the campaign, the film which I really felt will be very difficult to find an audience in, and it actually didn't, was Katiyabaz, Though I personally loved the film, and I really thought whatever resources we have, we did a very good campaign. But for some reason, it felt like, it would not cut across. Most of the other films have, if you ask me, exceeded our expectations. So whether it was a Hunter, whether it was NH10, or a Masaan, or Raman Raghav for that
So
matter.
what were the budgets of these films, if you are allowed to talk about it, and what kind of business did it do?
I won't remember full correctly, but Masaan was, I remember, definitely made in about 3.5, including everything, which again came from Anurag, because there was a budget made earlier which was higher, I think 6 or something, but Anurag was clear, you can't make this more than 3.5, 3 or 4, because it won't recover there, Trapped, I know, probably was made around 2 or something. Mota, the point is that that this is the budget, and you should make this film in that. Like the best story is Udta, I don't remember, but I know for sure it was one of the lowest cost of film with such big actors in it, and that's how you can tell those stories. Because that was a story which I think everybody, Anurag, Vikram, they all felt like, it should have bigger actors. Otherwise, that should be the point, because it's a story which should be told by them. It should have a bigger reach. But then at the same time, you are not going to get probably a budget, because it's not your typical masala film. It is risk, as they say, because it's dark and it's this in terms of story. I personally don't understand what does those terms mean, but yeah, but you have to make them in a certain budget, so it makes sense. So when I say this, there'll be a lot of work. They probably don't understand the importance of in-theater advertising, which the Hollywood guys know it so well. Like when they put out the in-theater publicity, they go to great lengths to make it interesting. So that's why when you go to a big theater or you will see the best standees are from the Hollywood films, And why it is very important, because like I said, if you make your audience profile, there are 3 kinds of audiences. One which come once in a month for sure. They might be coming twice, but the minimum. It's the easiest to sell a film to the guy who loves to come watching the film, But we don't understand that, especially Indian producers. And in Ugly, that's exactly what we did. We did so much of in-cinema advertising, starting with like there was this ticket cover which clearly said, watched PK, please come next week for Ugly.
Interesting.
And all this I learned from my exhibition days. But the best space to advertise a film to a male audience is the urinal, and if, I don't know how many of you noticed, but earlier I would just put film stuff there. Today now brands also want to go there. So for Ugly, we did a lot of advertising in cinema theaters, and believe you me, the opening day was better than Wasipur's opening day.
So earlier, correct me if I'm wrong, earlier there was a concept of financer. There was a studio. The financer used to put money, and the studio used to make the films. And then there was a distributor, exhibitor, the entire chain was there. What is the system that is being followed now? If you have to break it down, where does the producer fit in here? And let's break the myth of producer hai, usse paisa laga. Yeah. So let's discuss about that.
So the first part you said that earlier there was a financer, there was a studio. No, so either it was a financer or a studio. Studios have come in now, like about last 2 decades. So I think 2003, 4. Earlier there were studios, but they were mostly big production houses, not like studios. So financer would be very different. Earlier also there were 3-4 kind of things. There would be one guy who will just give money. That's it. He's interested in making movies. And then the producer will take, or most of the times director would take that money, and then one guy from their team would be like a senior production manager who would make the film and give it. Technically, a producer is somebody who is supposed to raise money, make the film, exploit the film, get all the revenue, return the money to whoever the interest is, and then also ensure that the film is exploited and it has reached out to the audience. Technically, this job doesn't need of your own money, because you are supposed to raise money, and that's where a studio comes in. That's where probably for till date also I go to some private financiers also for there are certain films. Like our next film, it's called Little Thomas, and it has been made by 3 different investors. A producer is somebody, like I said, will raise funds, make the film physically, complete the shoot, complete the post-production, edit, everything, ensure that it gets a release, if you want to send it through festivals, first to do festival, everything. And then you have to ensure that all the rights are exploited, the money is brought back in the bank, and it goes to the respective person, whoever put in money. That's the job.
And how does the distribution and exhibition work in India right now? Like I know for a fact that the OTT platforms are there. They have somewhat made a difference with how the exhibition used to happen. What is the structure right now? Where does the producer fit in here? And what's your job into making sure that these pieces are in place?
So again, there are 2-3 different kinds of, you can call them systems in place or whatever. One would be the most prominent, and probably for say a producer like me, would be to take the film and get it made with a studio. Where when you say a studio is somebody who will finance the film, release the film, distribute it, exploit it probably with you, and complete the journey. So right, so like a film, next film is with Z. So Z is the studio on it. They will distribute it, do the other part and all. For the studio film, it's simple. Like Gadar 2 is releasing, Z is the studio. They have made the film. They will distribute it, complete the entire journey, revenues, everything. Right. The other film for would be, I think, RRR was distributed by AA Films. Thadani, and he does a lot of like KGF also, like so where an independent film is, and AA Films is an independent distribution company who distributes these films and all. In that case, probably he might do non-theatrical revenues also, or you could also do it. And a smaller example of the other thing was in like Ibaleu, we directly spoke to the two. I knew it's a multiplex film, very urban centric, right? So you could talk to PVR, you could talk to Inox directly and put the film out there in the theaters. Because like I said, it was licensed earlier by Netflix, which was supposed to come in February. Yeah. So these are the 2-3 models you can distribute of it.
Tell me, how did you guys think about starting a new company? After Phantom was dissolved, I think you worked in some other places as well. Yeah. And then you regrouped again with Anurag, and then this time around you named it Good Bad Films. How did that happen? What's the journey so far? And do you think you have made good or bad films so far?
So, actually, I joined a bit later. Anurag started this company with 2 other partners. He had reached out to me in that time also when they were making it, but I was caught up in some other stuff which I was doing, and then lockdown happened and everything. So they went ahead, they made the first film called Choked. And just after that is when we again spoke, and then after that I joined while they were shooting Almost Pyar. Somewhere in the one chunk had shot before the lockdown, and
right.
that was that. So that is when I joined. The name came from him. He had already named it. I think broadly the thing is you never know, and it's always a fight, right? Is it a good film or a bad film? It's very subjective. I think that's what it came from. Some kind of sense when we discuss later is probably the duality of everyone or something like that. But I think the name's thought came from there. What we have made till now is, so one was, like I said, Choked was made before I was there. Almost Pyar, we've finished and released. We finished Kennedy, which will release this year, and we've almost finished Little Thomas. That's a film.
What happens exactly when you're done with the film, when you've done your Cannes screening, when you're hopeful that people will, respond to it positively? What goes behind releasing that film?
So Kennedy is something which when Anurag wrote and sent us the script, you knew this film's journey will have to be that. So, like I said, again, this is a bit of a marketing, a bit of a producer thing. where you want a certain film to come from outside, if say a film like Kennedy gets appreciated at a global event or at a global film festival like Cannes, then you're trying to build up a perception, and that helps trying to find a market for it, trying to find a buyer for it. And it has happened in some great results, like for Lunchbox, it was discovered by Sony there. So that's what the attempt is. For this film, this is the best marketing route or the best way to showcase it, to a certain section. And, like communication also flows in batches, like you start somewhere and stuff like that. So Kennedy, we were always clear, and a lot of thanks to Z, they were also very clear that yes, we should do a festival round with this film. So, and we were lucky, it got selected at Cannes, and that's how it began.
One small film that has made a lot of money through those satellite or theatrical or OTT rights that you never thought would make. I mean, it can be your film or any other film.
Any other film, I think the best example is Lunchbox. It really, I think it gave so much of hope to keep making, films of that type, content, size, and all of that. So that, I think, is a great successful journey, and it went through a festival, was exposed to so many people. I also personally think E-Bollywood has a great return that way, because it was discovered at Pingyao, then went to Mami, won at Mami, went to Berlin, and then Netflix was interested. They saw the film and they loved it. So yeah, so these are the two films I can right away think of. Bheja Fry had a great run. Again, I don't think nobody expected to become that big a hit. Also, there are other reasons also. There was no other film playing in theatres that time and all, but Bheja Fry had a great reception.
Okay, so this is one way of seeing how these festival films, as we call it, they find their market. But how does as a producer, you must be aware because you've worked with so many other directors and production houses as well. How does the mainstream production business work? So is this just a star-driven producer running the kind of returns in theatricals or satellite rights or OTTs, or is there anything else that is associated with it?
Like, I don't know, mainstream when you say, but most of the times, like a producer would want a studio as a partner in the beginning, and that studio ensures a good distribution and release and everything. Of course, if, like we discussed, if it's a star or bankable star, as you call it, it will have a great reception, because that's the whole point. Then the guy will open the film so much better. And of course, if the film is good and all. But yes, of course, it's one of the prominent reasons for people to greenlight films that way from the casting. But there are other films also, and every year we see examples and examples of breakout films, of content which didn't probably have the big stars names as such, but they were very good actors, very good films, and they have broken. And I think it happens every year almost, that there are examples and examples of those films. So see, somewhere it still is some kind of an a bit of a gamble involved in this business, right? Of course, there are a lot of studies and research, and there are mechanisms, and a lot of studios use them about rating a script and everything. But at somewhere it still becomes a gut thing. You make a film and you, of course, wish that a lot of people will like it. So I think it's there, and I think it'll always be there. You will take a punt on. You'll probably see a show reel and you'll go by like, what a great actor. It might work, it might not work, is a different thing. But it will be a form. It will be a basis of your decision making for sure.
Right now, the Tamil and Telugu industry is ruling the box office charts. The Malayalam cinema or the Malayalam film industry is ruling the quality side of films. Where are we in terms of...
We as in the Hindi film, Bombay
and
film.
The Bombay film industry. I don't call it Bollywood because I don't actually, find value in that. So that's why the Bombay film industry or the Hindi Bombay mainstream film industry is doing right now.
See, the strive is always there, and Rocky or Rani is a great example. The makers, like, they made a great film which is completely unlike Karan Johar's earlier films, and it is great, it is working. So, and this was always like, you always strive to make better films for yourself and for the audience so that they can enjoy more and all. The comparison bit is where I feel there are a lot of technical reasons which are there, which Like for example, you said, the South Indian industry is doing very well in box office, which is correct. But the reasons are a lot different. So, see, entertainment law is very state specific in India. The 4 states have a certain cap on tickets. I don't know, I think if I know correctly, it's right now 150. You can't price in more than 150. You make 150 rates in Bombay and then let's discuss box office. I'm just saying that. Just think about it. Right? But why is 150 also there? You have to also understand, like back in the days when there was home video as a major source of revenue, it was not there for South Indian films. Because it's a cycle, right? More people watch it in theatres, they love watching in theatres, the governments support it, they want people to come to theatres, so they end up watching it at theatres. But that also means nobody's buying the home video. Because everybody's seen it at the theatre, no? To compare it one part, like I said, it has a lot of layers, it has a lot of different reasons, is like that. So my personal take is, a 150 rupee ticket in today's time plays a huge difference. But then there are also other things, right? So compared to a 700, 800 rupee ticket in Bombay, I am pretty sure you price it 150 and we'll have a bigger box office for everything. See, again, those are different other reasons. No, there's business, there's taxation, there's so many other things involved. Government policies, what do you want? See, I personally think the audiences love going to theatres, and I'm pretty sure the governments want it that way, right? Because they love going to movies. So
okay, you kind of tiptoed through this. I'm sure you don't want to get into it, but films are not only run in a particular state. I mean, your film is successful, as we all have heard it, if your Hindi heartland is satisfied, if they are watching your film, you're sort of through the theatrical rights that you are getting. Do you think a 150 rupees ticket, as you are mentioning, will work across these chains also?
No. That's what I'm saying. So, see, again, the word Hindi heartland or the way we are defined, see, for a lot of films, majority of films which are made in Bombay or which release in multiplexes and all, more than 60 to 70% of business comes only from 12 to 14 cities. That's it. The rest of the country contributes just about 20%. So technically, and that's probably the reason, that whole debate about single screen, multiplexes or everything comes into place. 150 is an example I'm giving compared to a Bombay normal multiplex rates, Obviously, a 150, say, in Bandra is different than a 150 in, say, Jaipur, right?
Yeah.
Point being, like, and 150 again, there is a range. In South India also, there's 80 rupees. Also, the other thing is the number of shows. There the government has a cap. You can't have more than 5 to 6 shows. I think it's 6, there's a period, right? Which means that you can't do more shows just for exploitation. Which means you'll have more number of shows and more people because they want to come. So you'll have a longer running in the theatres. Here, if you have 24 shows in a day per multiplex, it's front loaded. Most of your audiences will come and see it in 4 days and go away. And then you'll think, the theatres are not doing that well. So these are a lot of factors, correct? There, like I said, a lot of policies are supporting the theatres to have more audience. Because that's what the audience, the people generally of those days, they love. So you are aiding what they want. Similarly, my point is, if we start looking that way to the exhibition broadly for Hindi films and all, I am pretty sure it'll have results for that.
One Kennedy story that you haven't shared with anybody yet, and it's not out there yet, and that you want to talk about.
I think Kennedy is one of those few films which Anurag has written alone. I think it's Ugly and only Black Friday. Otherwise, he always has written with somebody. Kennedy, he has written himself, and the fact would be, it's one of those rare films where 70 to 80% of the film is the same as it was in the script. Otherwise, he keeps improvising and changes. So.
Right. Let's sum your journey up a little bit now. So if I have to become a producer, what is the kind of route that I need to take? You have worked in advertising, you worked in marketing, you have worked as an associate producer, you've worked with a lot of films marketing as well when you're working with Phantom, and then you are eventually a producer. Generally, is this the kind of route that people take, or is there a shortcut to it? is this a viable kind of a thing to do for a lot of people, or is it like gambling, as you mentioned in one of your answers?
Just to clarify that the gambling is the nature of the business. Like when you greenlit something, it could be money is still coming from somewhere else, but the guy who's taking the decision, there is a fair amount of gambling involved. To answer about the producing thing, see, it's a journey that I didn't make. It just happened, right? The whole driving factor still was trying to make films, which is the core for anybody who wants to do it. What should be the way? I think the most simplest, and if you ask me, the easier way for people to become producers, first join a production house, find one function there, which you do it right, correctly, learn it, and then slowly learn the other things and slowly grow and understand how a production house works and how you can be a producer. That should be ideal. Having said that, there's also no other way. The main thing, as it said, that it's all about doing. Because even if you work at a production house or you work independently, no two films production journey is going to be the same. Because at the end of the day, you are dealing with human beings, mostly. That's the job. And the human beings will change, will keep changing. You talk to a person today, he'll be a different person tomorrow, right? And this whole nature where so many artists come together, starting from the writer, the director, the actor, music, everything. They are all human beings, right? And your job is to ensure that everything is working in harmony and to the best of the ability to tell that story, right? So you are going to be on the edge all the time. You are going to keep thinking, you are going to keep finding solutions, because there'll be newer problems every time. Even if you somehow want to shoot the same film after completing it, you still will have newer set of issues, right? So the purpose or the objective for you should be that you have to do it, and that will only come from love for movies.
And how much do producers make, if you can give me a ballpark figure as to what Ranjan makes?
I work at a production house where I am also a partner and something. So I think it's a bit not incorrect, but I think it's a bit to talk about what I make, because there's a lot of other links. There's profit sharing and stuff like that. But say if you start at, say, a decent size production house, you'll start, say, as a line producer. Depending on if you're doing ads, you'll probably make anywhere between 75,000 to a lakh. If you are doing films and if you've done a couple of films, then it'll be slightly more. And that's how you'll grow. A good EP on a film will come anywhere between 3 to 5 lakhs, depending on the size of the film and the scope. And you become an EP after at least 5 to 7 years of line producing. These are on the production side of things. For the producers who are more coming from, like, say, an associate producer who tries to put together a project and everything. Again, but that you can't start like that. You'll have to probably work for 3-4 years, understand everything, and then you become a associate producer. It again, from a smaller production house, would be anywhere between 1.5 to 2 lakhs, and going up to studios, it should be a bit more like 3.5. Bigger studios, platforms, of course, pay much better, and the producers there get far more bigger salaries than this. And then it also depends if you are a smaller production house where you are doing certain things, you also own some equity and stuff like that, then it's just a matter of convenience.
Thank you very much, Ranjan, for sharing these information with us. A lot of times we hear about producers, a lot of times we think that it's a very glamorous world and people make a lot of money, and we don't see the hard work and the toil that involves, and the kind of journeys that people usually have. So your journey is probably a testament to the fact that you don't need a particular background to reach somewhere, right? And that's something that we believe in this particular platform as well, and that's why we feature people like you. Thank you once again for sharing these insights with us, and I hope that people who are probably looking at this from a place where I come from or you come from, they will also...
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons it's like one of the causes very close to my thing, to demystify this.
Right.
Filmmaking is like a regular career, and there are ways to succeed in it.
Right.
That's it. That's as simply put.
And I totally believe what you said, Ranjan, and thank you once again for coming here and having a word with us. And if you like the conversation, do tell us in the comments below. If you have any questions related to the world of cinema and films, do mention that, and we'll probably forward a few to Ranjan as well. Do share, like, and subscribe to this channel. Do tell us which are the other guests and the sectors and the industries that you would want to know from us in Konversations Cafe podcast. And thank you very much, Ranjan, and I hope that Kennedy becomes a huge success.
So that we can make more films.
And you can make more films. Thank you very much.